Welcome to episode 2 in our series on color correction and color grading. I hope you found the last episode useful and that it answered some of your questions. In this episode, we'll expand on what we learned and start implementing the tools in our workflow. Please take your time watching this and pay close attention to details as we color a scene from start to finish. Welcome to DaVinci Resolve. Today, we'll be coloring a clip that was shot on an A7S in S-Log3 profile. Before we get started, let's quickly go over our nodes. To create a node, simply press Alt-S or Command-S on Mac. Nodes are little pieces of our final grade. Each node carries over its previous adjustments onto the next one. These nodes, called serial nodes. Let's go ahead and add some basic adjustments like contrast and push our colors into one solid color in the offset. Now we'll create a new node and we can see that the adjustments have been carried over from its previous node. I'm going to go ahead, desaturate this clip and create a following node. The third node is maintaining its previous adjustments combined between node number 1 and node number 2. It's missing the color but maintained the contrast. Now let's see what happens if we rearrange the following nodes. To do that, you have to declick the lines and drag them out of the green dots, rearrange the node order, and reattach the green points back together. There we go, we get a completely opposite result of what we had before. That is because we start with a desaturated node and then we add color and contrast. With that understanding, let's move on and color our scene. First of all, let's balance our image. As you can tell, there's a heavy magenta cast, mostly in our gamma and partially in our shadows. Let's go over to the waveform and switch to the histogram. From the log wheels, switch to the bars. This is where we will be adjusting our channels individually and rebalancing our picture. Notice how the red gamma channel is quite a bit dominant compared to the green and the blue channel. Based on the 0 to 100 point scale, we can find our lift, our gamma, and our gain/highlights. Let's go over to the gamma red channel and bring it down so we can align it with the green and the blue channels. We'll also have to work on the blue channel to balance it and compensate, as well as touch up the lift channel so it catches up to the green and the red channels. Great. All of this looks fairly balanced and aligned with each other. As we go along, we might find more imperfections, but we'll be able to fix those on the go. Let's check our work. All you need to do is press Ctrl D to turn off an individual node or Shift D to turn off the entire grade. Now that we're happy with this node, let's go ahead and label it. Simply right-click, select Node Label, and let's call this Balancing. Let's go ahead and move on to our contrast and exposure adjustments. We can switch out of the histogram and go back to the waveform, switch back to the primary wheels, and create a new node. Let's take a look at our waveform. Currently, it looks like we're a little bit overexposed. That is because of the skies. Let's go ahead to the offset wheel and neutralize that. We can move on to the gain, bring that up a little bit, bring down the blacks just a touch. Make sure that your blacks are corresponding and reflect exactly what you see on your image. Sometimes the waveform can look very healthy, however, what you see on the image will tell you otherwise. Now, it might look like our waveform is maxed out, however, we can preserve some of the settings and maximize this contrast. Let's go over to the log wheels, bring down the highlights, go back to the primary wheels and bring up the gain. And already the image looks a little bit brighter and our talent stands out. We can bring down the gamma to deepen the blacks within our talent. And let's go ahead and label this node as contrast. Let's move on to the saturation. Using the hue versus saturation, we'll bring that up until the colors look most natural. We don't want to overdo it. Let's zoom in using the wheel on your mouse and we'll go ahead and select our skin tones separately, as well as some of the wardrobe, including his and her jackets. What we're gonna do after that is we'll bring up those individual elements a little bit more so they stand out. The adjustments might seem very minimal, however, every little setting is very cumulative. So go ahead and turn it on and off and you will see that the small details have a great effect in the end. Moving on, we'll go over to the hue versus hue bar. If we zoom in once again, we'll see the imbalance in the ratio of green and the red colors in their faces. It's a small detail, however, it makes a big difference. I'm going to go ahead and select that and bring it up just a touch towards the red colors. As you can see, the ratio between the red and the green shades in her face look a lot better. Just by turning it on and off, you can see the difference. It's subtle, but it's there. I cannot stress enough how important these little settings are. So far, the colors look pretty good. Everything is fairly balanced. There's contrast, there's saturation, but we won't stop there. We can go ahead and add a few more enhancements. Personally, I like to select my blue hues and push them towards the blue or the teal just a little bit. That way, it gives a bit of a cinematic feel to it. Let's go ahead and label this node. Take a step back and take a look at what else can you do to improve your current state of the footage. If you look at your waveform, you'll notice that the talent is at the 640 mark. However, what we can do is to brighten them up and make them pop even a little bit more without blowing up the highlights. To do so, let's go over to our contrast curve and select the talent. Based on the selection, they're on the upper midtones and not the gain part of the waveform. Let's bring it up a little bit. Although we're clipping the highlights, we'll be able to fix it down the road right after this adjustment. So let's take a look and turn it on and off. And already the image seems brighter, but the highlights are clipping just a little bit. However, they can be fixed. Going over to the log wheels, we'll bring down the highlights, and there we are. We're in a safe zone in our waveform. Looking at it again, it makes me want to turn down the shadows a little bit more to achieve a better balance between the high and the lows. Again, turning it on and off, we can see a clear difference and how much it improves the quality of our footage. Following that, to keep track of things, let's label this node as contrast 2. And we'll add a second label to our saturation node as we also adjusted some of the hues. There are a couple more things I would like to do that will increase the complexity of your grade and will improve the look of your file. Let's go over to the log wheel and we'll separate the shadows from the midtones by adding a little bit of blue. Let's zoom in to take a closer look at the changes. Right away we can see how the blacks have changed and have a touch of color. What that does, it separates our shadows and blacks from the overall look in the image. If you look under the bridge, it will also add some nice separation and nice amount of color. Let's turn this on and off to check how far we've come and what the node actually does. And again, you can see it makes a difference. It's small, but it's cumulative. Let's call it shadows. Now you can take a look and see the pure black points are no longer black. They're contaminated with color. So let's move over to our curves and select luminance versus saturation. From there, we can select our black points and drag it down slowly. If you can take a look, again, if you have to zoom in, you'll notice how the pure black points stay black and it softly adds color into the shadows and midtones. Let's zoom in, take a look, turn it on and off, and yes, we can see the difference. It really makes a subtle difference, but the difference is there. Before we move on, let's quickly label this node as luminance and saturation. Taking a second look at this image after doing all the adjustments starting from balancing, contrast, saturation, and shadows, I'm pretty confident that this looks fairly decent. However, you can always find little things that you would like to keep tweaking or adjust before you finalize your grade. In this case, I would like to go ahead and increase the saturation a little bit more. I don't want to overdo it, but I want to keep things natural and make them pop a little bit better to achieve that Rec 709 look. One more time, let's zoom in. It makes a difference. Yes, again, it's small, but it's significant at the same time since the grade is cumulative. From here, if you have a similar clip, what you can do is right click and select grab still, go over to your gallery, go over to the next clip with similar colors and lighting conditions and select apply grade. What that does essentially is copying and pasting your settings from one clip to the next. It won't fix it or make it perfect, although sometimes it might, but I think it will give you a great starting point. You'll probably have to make additional adjustments to make the transition between the one clip to the other feel very seamless in terms of your colors. You can also select both clips, go over to the window tab, and select that. Go over to the other tab on the right and select selected clips. What that does, it brings up all your clips side by side in a grid view. From there, you can assess your work for continuity and any errors that you might have made. You can also go to the still mode and drag your still from one corner to the other to find exact points that you can focus on to match your colors from one clip to the next. I hope you found this tutorial useful. There are a lot of things that are happening in this video, but please take your time to study each and every node and adjustment. You can always rewind, go back and take a look at the workflow one more time, but it will take practice and patience. You'll have to make a lot of errors before you'll start making something really nice and something really good. Lastly, I haven't used every single tool that I've talked about in a previous episode, but you don't always have to. Find what works best for you and focus on that. Stay tuned for episode 3, where we'll go over some of the more advanced techniques on how to isolate your colors and target your grades. Good luck and have fun with your colors.